Welcome to our deep dive. And today we're tackling something pretty mind-bending.
Yeah, this one's a doozy.
It's called the quantum address theory. And it's all about how memory, creativity, and the universe might be linked in ways.
Ways that you wouldn't expect.
Exactly.
Yet, one of the things I find really interesting about this theory is that it basically flips our whole understanding of memory on its head.
Okay, how so?
So instead of seeing memories as these like static recordings, right?
Yeah.
Like files stored away.
Right, like unchanging?
Exactly.
Just sit there.
Yeah, this theory proposes that they're more like dynamic coordinates.
Coordinates.
Yeah, almost like addresses in this vast network of possibilities.
So instead of like files in a cabinet, they're more like signposts pointing to different realities.
This is a great analogy, yeah.
Okay, so how does that even work?
Well, the theory suggests that these quantum addresses, as they're called, are linked to different experiences and outcomes.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
And here's the really mind-boggling part. Those addresses can actually shift and change.
Wait, so they're not fixed?
No, they're not fixed.
They're moving targets. What could even cause them to change?
Well, a lot of things, actually. Like your current state of mind, the decisions you make, even just the passage of time can influence them.
So it's not just that we're remembering things differently. The memories themselves are actually changing. How is that even possible?
That's where the quantum part of this whole thing comes in.
All right, you're going to have to break this down for me.
Quantum physics can be a bit tricky, but basically at its core, it's the idea that things can exist in multiple states at once.
Multiple states.
Like at the same time?
Yep, all at the same time.
Okay. I sort of remember that from science class, but how does that relate to our memories?
Well, the quantum address theory suggests that our brains might actually be tapping into these quantum processes.
Okay, so our brains are like quantum computers.
You could say that.
So then our memories are the data that's being processed and constantly updated.
That's a simplified way to put it, but you're getting the gist.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. Yeah, and this fluidity of memory, it plays a crucial role in creativity.
Creativity. Okay.
So imagine each memory as a building block.
Okay, like a Lego.
Yeah, like a Lego.
Okay.
The quantum address theory proposes that creativity is the process of combining these blocks, these quantum addresses, in new and unexpected ways.
So like building something new with Legos
Exactly.
to create something totally new.
Got it.
This is where it starts to feel a little like science fiction, though.
How so?
Well, are we saying that every time we imagine something new, we're essentially peeking into an alternate reality where that thing already exists?
That's one interpretation of the theory, yeah.
And one that raises a lot of questions. Like, if our brains are capable of all this, how come we don't have people walking around constantly jumping between realities or pulling inventions out of thin air?
Well, that's because our brains over, millions of years of evolution have developed ways to filter and interpret this information.
So we don't go crazy.
Yeah, basically, you can think of it like this. Our conscious mind is only aware of a tiny fraction of what our brains are actually processing.
Like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, exactly, like the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, that makes sense. But it also feels like we're missing out on so much potential.
Perhaps, but it also highlights how powerful our imagination truly is.
So even though we might not be consciously aware of accessing these alternate realities, our ability to dream, to come up with new ideas, could all be a testament to our brain's connection to this vast network of possibilities.
Exactly. And, it's not just limited to those things. Either think about problem solving, planning for the future. All of that could be influenced by this.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this theory could apply to things like art and music, where people are always coming up with new ideas.
Right.
But how does it work in a more practical sense? How do our brains actually decouple from the laws of physics to access these other possibilities?
It's not so much about decoupling from physical laws, but rather recognizing that our mental space operates differently.
So like how we can imagine ourselves flying without worrying about gravity.
Precisely. In our minds, we can bend the rules.
But that's just our imagination, right?
True, but think about it this way. The brain works with symbols and representations, not literal physical actions.
Okay, give me an example.
When you imagine your childhood home, you're not physically going back in time.
Right.
You're reactivating certain neural patterns, a mental map, not just of space, but of time.
So when we imagine something, our brain isn't just recalling a memory, it's actively constructing a new experience, a new reality within our minds.
Exactly. It's like our brain is a simulator capable of running different programs, exploring different scenarios.
Without being limited by the physical world.
Right. And this freedom is incredibly useful.
It helps us plan for the future by playing out different scenarios.
And it helps us learn from our past without having to physically relive it.
I'm starting to see the implications here.
And the quantum address theory suggests that this simulation isn't just happening in our heads.
It's tapping into a network of actual possibilities out there in the multiverse.
That's the mind-boggling implication.
It really blurs the line between imagination and reality.
It makes you question what's real and what's not.
This is all getting pretty heady.
Yeah, no.
I think we need a moment to process all of this before we go any further.
I agree.
All right, so we've talked about how our brains might be tapping into some serious quantum weirdness when it comes to memory and imagination.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is. But where does all this leave us in the real world? Like, how does this theory play out in fields like art or technology?
Well, a good place to start might be artificial intelligence.
AI, you're saying AI might be using quantum processes too.
It might sound a little far-fetched, I know,
Not a bit.
but think about how AI systems learn. They're trained on massive amounts of data.
Right, tons of it.
Images, text, music, all sorts of stuff.
So that data is kind of like a collection of human-generated quantum addresses.
Exactly, encapsulating all sorts of experiences and ideas.
Okay, following you.
And the AI analyzes this data, looks for patterns and connections, and then uses that information to create something new.
So it's like the AI is sifting through this massive library of human memories.
Right, a collection of these quantum addresses.
And then remixing them to come up with something original.
That's a great way to visualize it. And just like with human creativity, the results can be pretty unpredictable.
Yeah, think about those AI-generated images that sometimes look so real, it's kind of creepy.
Exactly, or music that evokes a specific emotion.
But doesn't sound like anything you've ever heard before.
Right.
So are you saying that those AI creations, even the weird ones, could be glimpses into alternate realities?
It's a possibility, and one that raises some really interesting questions about creativity and consciousness.
Like if an AI can access and manipulate these quantum addresses without having conscious experiences like we do, what does that even tell us about creativity?
It's a big question for sure.
It is. But let's bring it back to humans for a second. How does this theory apply to things like art and psychology?
Well, let's take psychology, for example. Imagine someone struggling with social anxiety.
No.
Could reframing a childhood memory of public speaking from a failure to a learning experience change their quantum address?
And help them approach similar situations with more confidence.
Exactly. It wouldn't be about changing the past.
But changing how they view it.
Right. Shifting the perspective, the emotional weight attached to that memory.
That could have some pretty big implications for treating things like trauma or phobias.
Even addiction.
And what about art?
Well, if memories are really these quantum addresses, then every act of creation becomes this journey through the multiverse.
Okay, I like that.
You can think of artists as explorers drawing inspiration from a vast network of possibilities.
So it's not just about individual talent or skill.
Right. It's about tapping into this wellspring of human experience.
That transcends individual lives.
Exactly. Each work of art becomes like a window into another reality.
A glimpse into a different way of seeing the world.
And this connection to the multiverse might explain why certain works of art resonate so deeply with us.
Why they feel timeless and universal.
Right, even if we can't quite put our finger on why.
But if we're all drawing from this collective unconscious, why are artistic styles and expressions so unique?
That's where individual experience and perspective come in. Think of it like a filter.
Okay.
We're all accessing the same source material.
The same raw ingredients.
But our personal experiences, our values, our emotions, they all shape how we interpret and express that information.
So it's like every artist is tuning into a different frequency.
Picking up on different aspects of this multiversal signal.
And then translating that into their own unique artistic language.
Exactly. And the more diverse our experiences, the more unique and valuable our contribution to this collective tapestry of art and creativity becomes.
It's like we're all adding our own threads to this giant cosmic quilt.
I like that.
This is all so mind-boggling, but also incredibly inspiring. It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible when we start viewing the world through this quantum lens.
It's definitely a new way of thinking about things.
It makes you wonder about those what-if moments in life. Are those just fleeting thoughts, or are they glimpses into alternate realities where we made different choices?
That's a question for the philosophers, I think.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
But this is a deep dive, so we're going to tackle it head-on in our next part.
All right, let's do it.
So we're back and ready to tackle those big questions about the self-free will and the nature of reality.
Yeah, these are the ones that really make you think.
They do. If our memories, the very things that make us who we are constantly shifting and changing based on this quantum address system, does that mean there's no such thing as a fixed self?
Well, it's a complicated question for sure.
Yeah.
The theory doesn't suggest we're just bouncing between realities randomly.
So there's some kind of order to it.
Right. It suggests a more nuanced view of free will.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does free will fit into all of this?
Our choices, our actions, they act as filters or lenses, you could say.
Filters?
Yeah, they influence which quantum addresses we access, and that in turn shapes the reality we experience.
So it's not just about what happens to us.
It's about how we choose to interpret and interact with those events.
We're creating our own reality in a way.
You could say that. We're not just passive passengers in this multiverse.
We're active participants.
Right, we're co-creating our reality with each decision we make.
But if there are infinite possibilities, infinite versions of ourselves out there making different choices, doesn't that make our choices here and now feel less meaningful?
That's where we bump up against the whole question of meaning. What makes something meaningful? Does the existence of infinite possibilities diminish the significance of our choices, or does it actually amplify them?
I see what you're getting at.
If there's only one fixed reality, then our choices might seem predetermined in a way.
Like it doesn't matter what we do because it's all already set.
Right. But if there are infinite possibilities, then each choice we make has the power to create something truly unique.
A reality that wouldn't exist without that specific choice.
Exactly.
So our choices matter because they're shaping a reality that's distinct from all those other potential realities.
Precisely. It makes our individual experiences or individual paths that much more significant.
The multiverse doesn't negate responsibility, it highlights it.
It does. We're not just responsible for ourselves, we're responsible for the reality we choose to inhabit.
This quantum address theory has really taken us on a journey. From the inner workings of our brains to the vast expanse of the multiverse, it's made me rethink everything.
It's a powerful concept.
It is, and it's a lot to take in.
Definitely. It's a theory, a hypothesis, but it opens up so many fascinating questions and encourages us to consider possibilities we might never have imagined before.
Like, what if those what-if moments in life aren't just fleeting thoughts? What
Yeah.
if they're glimpses into alternate realities where we made different choices?
That's something each of us has to grapple with, I think.
It's a question that stays with you.
It does. The beauty of this theory is that it doesn't give us all the answers. It encourages us to keep asking questions, to embrace the mystery.
This deep dive has truly expanded my perspective.
I'm glad to hear that. And, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this, that's perfectly normal.
It's a lot to absorb.
It is. The quantum address theory isn't something you grasp overnight. It's a journey.
And we encourage everyone listening to continue that journey. Read more about quantum mechanics, delve into the latest research on consciousness, and most importantly, pay attention to your own thoughts and experiences.
You might be surprised by the connections you start to make, the glimpses of the multiverse you begin to perceive in your everyday life.
It's all about exploring those possibilities.
Exactly. The journey of discovery is not about reaching a destination, it's about the exploration itself.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredible. We've explored the interconnectedness of memory, creativity, and reality, and touched on the profound implications for human nature and the future of AI.
The quantum address theory is a reminder that we're all, in a sense, explorers of the multiverse.
So to everyone listening,
Yeah.
embrace the mystery, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring the infinite possibilities that lie within and around you.
Well said. That's a perfect way to wrap things up.
That's it for this deep dive into the quantum address theory. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep those quantum addresses flowing and keep exploring the multiverse within.